Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here, sharing in this space of growth, healing, and transformation. If you've already subscribed to Loving Everything, thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. Your support means so much, and together, we're creating a space where love in all its forms can be explored and embraced. As you listen to this episode, if it resonates with you, I invite you to like the video and share it with anyone who might benefit from the insights we're diving into today. These conversations are all about expanding our capacity to love ourselves, each other, and the world around us. And if you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to explore my other episodes where we journey into love's deepest, most unconditional forms. Each one is an invitation to reconnect with the parts of yourself that are waiting to be seen, healed, and loved. So thank you for being here. Let's begin. Yes. Well, you definitely have me more relaxed than I normally would be. Probably because I know you so well, and I know you've experienced so much with me at this point that I could pretty much say anything in front of you. And so there's that comfortability for sure.
For sure.
And there's a lot of history there, right?
For sure.
We've seen each other through some very dark times.
Yeah.
In each other's lives.
Strange times. Like I was just remembering just now, like that time that we did do that shoot in San Francisco where we bounced around all day. I am 90% sure I was in San Francisco at that time because I was getting a divorce.
Oh, I believe you. But I probably didn't know you well enough for you to share that with me because I think that was only the second time I shot with you.
Yes. And I think I was down there getting some space.
So let's talk about that. What did you learn out of your divorce?
Oh, man.
Since I know I'm recording on both here and here, yeah. Let's start there.
Yeah, no, a lot. I definitely learned through the process of divorce to stick up for yourself.
Yeah.
I should have stuck up for myself better, both prior to getting a divorce and during the divorce process. I definitely learned that ultimately relationships can't make you happy if you're not already happy to begin with. Which I think is one of those things that everyone says out loud, and it sounds so obvious, but in practice, it isn't. Right? Like the things
that is so true on so many levels.
Like the things that you don't like about yourself are not going to get fixed in a relationship. They're going to get fixed by, you were talking about this earlier, by doing the work. A relationship can be helpful, maybe, depending on who you're with. Well, it's helpful
because we soothe each other through the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
We're essentially taking on each other's karma. We're
100%.
taking on each other's ancestral trauma. We're 100%. Taking on each other's childhood trauma. And we're saying, okay, I'm signing up for this. And every single time you react at me, I'm going to still show up through it. I'm still going to try and love you through it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah. That's the commitment.
I definitely learned the lesson, don't get married in your 20s. Because there's no reason to. I mean, just why? So there's that. Gosh, what else?
Well, because you're having babies. Most people.
True, which I've never had.
Right.
So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Although I had a baby and I didn't get married. I didn't get married until I was 31. I think I was 31 by that point. And I was like, either we're going to get married or we're going to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I remember you telling me that once.
Well, it had been 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you don't fucking know by now,
True.
Sincerely.
True.
And I think that I've gotten a lot better at being able to say that much earlier.
Yeah.
But, if somebody isn't, and I won't say I'm a professional at that by any means, because there's a delicate balance, I think, between the teetering point of commitment in the sense of, am I running away from something and just not giving it a big enough shot?
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Am I committed enough to work through some of this trauma with somebody else and give it a shot? Yeah, I think you and I have done that a lot.
For sure. I would say probably the biggest lesson I learned is that relationships ending aren't the end of the world at all.
What are they?
They're an end to a chapter of your life. I mean, if you want to talk about, your life in San Francisco or wherever as a
chapter on a book on the shelf.
Book on the shelf.
Yeah.
Relationships can be the same way, and that doesn't. I don't say that to minimize them.
Yeah.
They're important.
Yeah.
Of course, they're important.
Yeah. They shape
but
us.
They shape us.
Yeah.
But
they can change our lives.
They can change our lives
very
100%,
profoundly.
Super profoundly. But no relationship at the beginning or at the end of it is going to ruin you as a person. Ultimately, they will create challenges. They will be difficult. They will be hard. Ending of relationships is always challenging, difficult, hard. Even the ones that you wanted to get rid of, right? Like the worst ones where you're just like, I need to be out of this relationship. Those are still challenging and super hard, but you will continue on.
Because it's messy.
Right.
Because it's feelings.
It's messy and it's feelings.
And none of us have a rule book or a guidebook on how to navigate that. I mean, hopefully you were with a partner who still has enough love in their heart or care in their heart that they back up as loving and supporting as they can.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's to varying degrees of how much work you've done on yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Because like you were saying at the beginning, you can only meet someone to the point that you've met yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you can't deal with those feelings, you're certainly not going to deal with somebody else's feelings.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I feel like a lot of people do this when they're young. I certainly did when I was younger. You get into a relationship and you really conform to what the person you're in a relationship with wants you to be, which works great in the short term, but does not work in the long term by any means. And when I say short term, I mean like a month.
A month?
Right. I mean, because you can only conform for so long before you're just kind of like,
why conform?
Who am I?
Well, that does take maturity. But why conform from the get-go?
Right. But then how long did that feel good?
Not conform?
No, to conform. How long did that feel good?
I think it doesn't feel good.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're just putting on a mask. You're not real.
Exactly. And you can ignore.
And eventually someone's going to figure out that you're not like that.
Right. But you can consider the mask like an exciting good thing for a really short window. But I would argue like
you're hurting
4
yourself.
weeks in, you're just going to be like, what am I doing? Who am I?
Yeah. And now I got to keep this shit up.
I don't like eating sushi, but I'm pretending I do. Or whatever it might be.
Yeah. But I think when you're younger, too, think of you're in your 20s, you're still in like a discovering phase.
100%.
You don't know yourself very well.
100%.
You're much more impressionable by what somebody else might want. Things you haven't tried before that you're like, I don't know, maybe I'll be good with that. Let's
100%.
try it out.
100%.
Yeah. So definitely more flexible. And as you get older, you get less flexible because you're like, no, I think I fucking know who I am now.
Exactly. And I'm 100% good with that.
Yeah. And it's either going to work or it's not going to work.
Right.
And
I know who I am now.
Yeah.
And I don't need to apologize for it or act like it's
Isn't it rad?
Yes. I don't need to act. I mean, obviously I have flaws. But
you do?
A couple. Like,
all this time I thought you were perfect.
Well, I try to be. I don't know. No, I have a few. I truly don't like sushi. And I know that's a moral failing.
What is wrong with you?
I know that's a huge moral failing. I used to, it's so funny. I feel like sushi is one of those things where when you say you don't like it, the instant reaction of everyone on the planet is, well, you just haven't had the right sushi. And when I was young, I used to be like, oh,
maybe.
You might be right. Okay, I'll do this. No. Talk about being inflexible. I'm at the point where I can say, no, I just don't like it. I'm sorry, I don't.
Honestly,
I wish I did.
I think honestly, it's kind of like an artichoke. It's like eating an artichoke.
Exactly.
It's just a butter delivery. It's a soy sauce delivery system.
I don't like artichokes either.
Oh, hilarious.
I don't.
Too much work?
Too much texture.
Too much texture.
I have a texture thing with food.
I have a texture thing too, but not like that. For some reason,
slimier things I don't like.
Yeah.
Avocados I don't like.
Oh God, you don't like avocados?
I don't, because they're slimy.
Okay.
I don't like bananas because they're slimy.
Okay.
I don't like sushi because it's slimy.
Okay.
I don't like raw tomatoes because they're slimy.
I forgot you have these food things going on too. I did too.
Yeah. It's totally a slimy thing. I just don't like slimy things.
Learned that that's called something now.
Is it?
Yeah. So when we were kids, we didn't have all these diagnoses. And now I'm starting to get educated on all of these. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I had all of these disorders when I was a kid that never got addressed. Yeah. And here I am as an adult just making things happen. I thought that's what made me special. But no, really, it's just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff now.
The most horrifying thing in the world to me is
like my food touching.
I hate that too.
I used to.
I don't like it when food touches.
I worked through it. Yeah. I realized that it was just me. That was the only. So it's at the basis of being anorexic. Mm. It's the only thing you have control over, is your food. If you come from a family where you can only control what goes in your body.
That makes complete sense.
And you have zero control about your environment or what else is going on.
Complete
or
sense.
What else other people.
God.
What other people. Right?
That was a revelation.
Was it? Did I just blow your mind?
You just blew my brain.
Did I?
Yes, you did.
Really?
Yes.
In addition to it's your relationship, food is your relationship to love. So if you are not feeling, like if you're heartbroken, you do not feel deserving of nurturance, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you're shut down. You're completely shut down, and thriving is the furthest thing from your mind.
Right.
Yeah. So you're unlikely to eat in those moments.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
To me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our brains are complicated things.
Well, I mean, they've studied it a lot now, so there's a lot of information now that I think we're just way more aware of than we were when we were kids. Because when we were kids, like our generation, we were raised by boomers. So like Gen X, I don't know that everyone understands this. Gen X is very unique that way because we're not the boomer generation, but we were raised by boomers with boomer beliefs. Yes. And so we were the first generation to really kind of buck the system. And we tried. We really did. We tried to bring it a lot further than it has been. Yeah. But the point is...
And now we're just jaded. Oh my God, jaded.
We were left to our own devices to figure so much out in the world.
I was naive enough to believe when I was a teenager, like 14, 15 years old.
That you would have a pension by now and retire?
Well, and yes, that. And
Social Security?
And that we were going to make the world... If we just went to college? Well, and that we were going to make the world a utopia.
Better place. Yeah.
Like that. Our parents were just so wrong.
Yep.
And we were going to do everything so right.
Yep.
And
we definitely did try, and we made some good progress.
Some.
Well, we were a great buffer for the boomer generation for what other generations have to deal with now.
True.
Yeah.
That's true. We took a lot of hits.
We took a lot of hits.
And a lot of disappointments.
That's why we were so messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
one of those being we just wanted the boomers to leave.
Yeah.
And we're still kind of doing that.
Still waiting. We keep making drugs to make everybody, live longer.
Yeah.
But if you would have gone back 100 years, I might have been dead by now. Yeah.
True. I probably would be too.
Yeah. So, there's that. There's the upside of that. We're all living longer, and that's really a beautiful thing. I'm not saying that people didn't live until they were 100, but it was unusual, right? Or less usual without overcoming something very challenging.
For sure.
Like tuberculosis or some kind of crazy shit that I don't even have to think about anymore.
Same.
Okay. I don't know how we went there.
I don't know either.
Okay, so you realize that we're talking about women. We're just going to talk about women this time.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so you were married before.
I was.
And what was your greatest lesson with regards to women through that experience?
Oh, man. I mean, I would argue this is hard because a lot of the things I want to say or that I would say or I'm going to say, it's difficult. I fear that it's going to come across as like I am just like checking the boxes that people want to hear. But that being said, I am keenly aware, and I probably don't do enough. I'm very aware that we live in a society that is not necessarily kind to women. I'm serious. We do.
I don't think you would have addressed this even 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that you weren't self-aware. I'm
Okay.
just, or like, you weren't oblivious. I
Sure.
just don't know that you would have ever said this in
Sure.
conversation.
Well, and like, I feel like some people who say that out loud, and not to turn this around on me because we're talking about women, you know, there's going to be the instant eye roll of like, well, this guy's just, you know, he's just saying the things that the world wants to hear.
I think
right?
you have enough experience with women to be able to justify
Sure. So
your position.
Sure. So yes. So people aren't.
How many women do you think you've worked with now?
Hundreds.
Yeah. Like if you had to guess.
258 or something. I don't know.
Okay, so not as many as I would have thought. Okay,
maybe
keep
more
going.
than that. I just
Okay.
threw that number
Okay,
out there. I have
okay.
no idea.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Okay.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, society isn't necessarily kind to women. It should be much kinder, even in a supposedly progressive world that we live in, say, quote unquote, Western culture, right? In the United States, you know, whatever, where it's better here than in, say,
Saudi Arabia
or something where a woman can't even go outside without, you know, something totally, completely
covering every single aspect of her.
bit of her body or whatever it may be. But even here, it just like, you know, we've seen it so much recently. Like I was so amazed, not to get into like politics necessarily, but
I know what you're going to say.
There's that whole like your body, my choice thing that people are saying without apology, blatantly using their real name. You know, like my name's Joe Smith, and here I am, your body, my choice, and I make no apology for saying that. And it's like, what the? Are you kidding? Like in the year 2025, you are totally blatantly okay with saying that out loud. And then, you know,
and feeling empowered about it.
And feeling empowered by it.
And justified.
And where I want to go, where I want to scream whenever I see other men and other women, quite frankly, who buy into that kind of stuff, because there are women.
Because it's not just men.
It's definitely not just men.
No,
it's
it is not.
Women.
I'm always amazed when I see a woman on that side. I'm like,
yeah. I just kind of want to be like, you do realize that this is bad for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, it is not good for you to have, say, a romantic partner that you treat as a subservient person. That is not a good thing for your life. That sucks for your life. Because
tell us why.
Because
why does that suck, Andrew?
Because you are with someone who is not going to challenge you, who is not going to help you grow as a person, who is not going to, I don't know, like disagree with you in any way. And so when you fuck up and when you do dumb, stupid, idiot things, you have this subservient person that you've put in this box of like, well, I'm the one in charge, and you know,
you have no say.
You have no say in anything. How is that good for you? Like, well, it's not.
It's good if you want to be in control.
I guess.
Yeah.
But there's better ways to be in control. You can be in control of yourself without having to be in control of somebody else. I don't know.
Call you crazy?
Call me crazy. Call me crazy. But I mean, I don't know. It just seems so exhausting. Well, antiquating and exhausting.
Yeah.
To want to exert that kind of control over someone else all the time. Mm-hmm. I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Unless you're a sadist.
Unless you're a sadist, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm not, so that's hard for me to relate to, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just weird. And,
so,
you know, I look at the people that I have worked with
yes.
over time, and the feedback I have gotten from a lot of people who, you know,
a lot of women who have been in a lot of abusive relationships.
Been in a lot of
abusive relationships. Because I know you and I have talked about that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But the
and we're going to talk about why, but keep going.
Sure. But the feedback that I've gotten over the years is the experience of working with you is an empowering one. And I want to believe that's true of everyone I've ever worked with, which it might not be, but I want to believe that it is. And, you know, and I have a lot of people I've worked with multiple times.
You're kind.
Well, I try to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So
you're kind and you're gentle in your interpersonal relational skills.
Sure.
I know I said demanding earlier, but what I meant was you have high expectations for the way that you want the body to be represented on the page.
There's a way to be demanding without being cruel.
Yes, absolutely.
And those are two very different things that might get confused sometimes, but they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go to a restaurant and want a very specific thing that you order, and you don't have to be cruel about it.
Yeah.
You know, you can
ask nicely
and appreciate what you get back.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so what did that teach you in your marriage?
What is
your
that?
Divorce. We were talking about you were married, and so I asked you, like, what did you learn about women through that? And you were saying that we don't treat women well.
No, we don't. And I'm very, very lucky in that my divorce was not particularly dramatic.
It wasn't dramatic. It was traumatic.
It was traumatic.
Yes.
In some ways. I would argue, just for me personally, because I can't speak for somebody else, it was traumatic mainly in the sense of, you know, you want to talk about like societal expectations. You get married and you kind of want to do the whole like this is forever. And then when it's not, you get this huge weight on your shoulders of like, I suck. I failed. Oh my God. I'm breaking a bazillion oaths that I put out into the public world of like, we're going to do this forever in sickness and in health. And you literally were in a court of law like, making all of these promises
to your friends and family.
Your friends and family are there. And then suddenly.
And there's no rule book for how to leave.
There's no rule book for how to leave.
There's no rule book for how to act when you're in that.
100%. And then so when you're calling it quits and you're breaking that tie, there's just it's almost like you're leaving some like secret society that
you are. It's no different than like if you were Mormon and you were written in the, I can't remember what the book is called, but you know what I mean.
The Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
I think the sacred contract.
Oh,
right?
Something like that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but I'm not Mormon. So.
When you said Book of Mormon, I thought immediately of like the screenplay and the.
Oh, the musical?
Yeah, the musical. So, I don't think that's what it is, but maybe it is.
Well, there is a Book of Mormon, I think. I don't know. I'm not Mormon.
I'm not either. I can't speak to this.
Yeah.
And sorry if we offended anyone.
Yeah.
But ultimately, okay, so we were talking about women, back to women. The reason why you know women so well is because you have a passion for fine art photography.
Sure.
Yeah. So you got into photography when you were in high school.
Yes.
And you fell in love with it because of a really great teacher, you were saying.
Yes.
And you started photographing women specifically because of your experience in Catholic upbringing.
Yes.
With a lot of the erotic art.
Yes.
And when you started photographing women, you've developed all of these relationships over the years with at least 250 women to your testament.
Sure.
So what has that taught you? What do they bring? And let's talk about why they're in abusive relationships too. What you think?
What do they bring?
What have they taught you?
What have
Working
they
with
taught
all
me?
those different women.
They have taught me that I would say that self-expression comes in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different varieties. I have worked with people who, they bring sort of this weird's the wrong word, but they bring like a very intriguing, unique, quiet energy to, a session that we work with. I've worked with people who bring a very like overt, like in your face energy to a particular session and everything in between. And that's part of what I love about it, right? Is the different kinds of energy that people bring in to working together. And I don't know, it's fascinating to me in a good way. I don't know.
So you appreciate women's expression.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
And their ability to be comfortable in their bodies.
And their ability to be comfortable in their bodies. And I try as best I can. I'm human. Everyone's human. But I try to walk into every every session that I do without any kind of expectation, right? I have never been the kind of photographer who's like, okay, we have this concept and we're going to do this concept and we're not going to deviate from it. And this concept's going to be, we're going to try to recreate like some 50s advertisement or something. Never been that kind of person. It's always just been like, hey, let's get together and just see what happens. Like I'll pick a spot, and mostly I'm picking a spot because we can get away with it, not because it's got any kind of particular feature that I want it to have. It's more like there just won't be anyone else around. So, we won't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Like the police won't show up or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But then I just want to run with it, and I want people to bring their authentic selves as much as humanly possible, as much as they can, which I respect.
It's pretty hard to hide with your clothes off.
It's pretty hard to hide with your clothes off, but at the same time, I also really respect the fact that that is a huge challenge for them, right? And there's been people I've worked with where like the first, second, third time I work with them is a totally different experience from the fourth time, because the fourth time or the fifth time will be when they've finally been able to bring their authentic self
and relax
and be who they are
and be comfortable around you.
Right. Yeah. And I love that progression, in part because, let's face it, I thought they were bringing their authentic self the first time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know them well.
And
I get to see
these different selves.
Right. I get to see the progression.
Yeah. You get to see the mask fall away.
Right. I get to see the mask fall away. And some of that progression is their life is changing because, say, I work with them today.
Yeah.
Session number 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever will be 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So whatever was happening the first time in their life, maybe they were going through a really tough time, or maybe their life was hunky-dory, and then maybe the third or fourth time it's
something
the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing these different
expressions
versions of themselves,
and
right? And I just think that's very interesting, but also very, I don't know, privileged, I guess you could say.
And beautiful, right?
And beautiful, yes, yeah. 100%.
I think you appreciate women.
I try to.
Yeah. I think you appreciate
I like to think I do.
Yeah.
I like to think I do.
I think you've spent a passion appreciating women.
Yes.
Which is why I thought you would be a great person to talk to about this subject.
Yeah.
Okay, so so why, let's get back to the abuse. So why in your From your perspective, why do you feel like a lot of the models that you work with are in abusive relationship? Let's hear your side of that first.
I've noticed a pattern that a lot of people that I've worked with go through, and keep in mind, I don't know everything. People choose to share what they want to share.
You're not a therapist.
I'm not a therapist.
Although you might have felt like one at
Though at times I do.
Yeah.
100%. Because I think you touched on it a little bit. You'd be pretty amazed at how much can come out of a person when they're in a simultaneously vulnerable yet empowering place.
And exposed. You're very exposed.
Right. So it's not a whole lot different than a therapist couch, right, sometimes. But I feel like people get into this pattern as like a common thing that I see is people get into this pattern where, they find a person to be with and that person is very supportive of who they are the first 2 months or whatever, and then suddenly is not supportive anymore. And they want to talk about controlling somebody else. And I tend to work with people when they're in that moment of I think I'm being controlled. Do I stay or do I go?
Why do you think that you attract women who are in such a transit in their lives?
I think they just feel safe to maybe talk about, because when they're with me and when they're working with me, they are walking away from whoever they're with saying, ooh, I don't like you posing for people. And so but they're still doing it. So they're still expressing their own self-control at that moment. But yet they know they've got this force just outside of the room at home or wherever it may be, 2 miles away or whatnot, who's trying to exhibit this control. And so it's like that transition point, right? And I've watched people tip both directions, right? I have worked with people who will get into these, I don't think it's crazy to say abusive relationships.
Yeah, cyclic,
sure. Where a person has convinced them to not do the thing that they want to do anymore. And then I've worked with people who've tipped the other direction and been just screw that person. I enjoy doing this and I'm going to keep doing it. And I've had situations where people have tipped arguably the wrong way and gone to this abusive, controlling person. And then 3 years later, it's done, as it inevitably would be. And then come back and been I don't know what I was thinking. It feels so great to be working with you again because I finally got rid of that guy. And now I can feel empowered again. So I always find that fascinating when I work with someone who's at that point, right? Because I can see their eyes light up, excuse me, and, and they're just hey, I'm doing this for me, right? I want to believe, and I know, again, this isn't true of everyone, but I want to believe that every time I work with a person and I want to create an environment and an energy where they are doing it because they want to for themselves and they are being selfish in that moment. And I'm just kind of there facilitating a selfish act. Which I know is going to seem backward to some
process.
People.
You're an alchemist.
Sure. And I know some people will think about that and be but you're the photographer and you're the person looking at somebody and you're the one who's benefiting from that gaze. And that's a strong argument and I get that. But
well, yeah, that's a perk.
That's a perk, I suppose. But it's also one of those things that I think when you've experienced it and when you've been on that side of the camera and you're doing it because you want to be.
It's also not, the work that you do is not necessarily lewd.
No.
It's in appreciation.
I mean, that's all in the eye of the beholder, right?
Well, but my point is true. Okay, fair enough. There are more conservative viewpoints, yes.
Yeah.
However, like the work that you're doing is in appreciation for the female body.
Sure.
Like there is not a photograph that I've not ever seen that isn't inspired by some sort of curve or line or
Yeah.
you know, the light on someone's body, or it like it's your, you can see through the photograph, it's your appreciation. You're like, check this out.
Yeah.
Like, see how beautiful she is.
Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
like to think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what makes a great photographer, right?
Sure. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it helps to have a good subject. I'm not saying that, you know,
100%.
but you know, and it's a collaboration.
100%.
Those are the best sessions.
By far. Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So my thoughts on the abuse part
Okay.
is that, one, I think we have an energetic signature or vibration. We all do.
Sure.
And you have a background of trauma.
Sure.
Okay. So when we have a background of trauma, we tend to vibrate at a particular rate, we'll just say.
Okay.
Signal.
Okay.
Yeah. Like attracts like,
Sure.
right?
And
A lot
energy.
of my clients are going through or have gone through similar experiences that I have in the past. Otherwise, how would I fucking help them with it?
Sure.
Okay. So in that sense, because of some of the things that you've overcome, you wouldn't be able to set the environment or tone for that experience in any other way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's almost like an invisible, like a moth to a flame.
Sure.
Okay. So that's what I suspect is going on there, right? Is that the people that have gravitated to you or your work, whether it's on a conscious or a subconscious level, are drawn to your work because of your expression in addition, or what you're trying to convey through a photograph.
Right.
In addition to that unspoken contract with somebody, right? Like there's a reason why we all meet each other. There's a reason why you and I met when we did, and why we've actually sustained our friendship this entire time.
Sure.
Through some really weird ass times and some really strange stuff that's happened in our lives.
Sure.
Really traumatic stuff that's happened in both of our lives.
Sure.
And there could have been any time that we just stopped talking, right?
Sure.
But we always kept that connection going, and that's true of most, right? We were talking about like even marriage and divorce. You
Right.
know, sometimes relationships don't turn out to be what you think they're going to be. I think you
Right.
mentioned that you get married and you think, oh, maybe it'll be like this, or I'll spend the rest of my life with this person. That's what my parents did, but damn, are they miserable,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, what's in the rule book for me? I didn't really have great modeling there. So we were kind of the first generation that really took divorce seriously,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And actually did it,
yeah.
and then mucked our way around in how to do it.
Right. I mean, it's weird to me that as a child, and I'm curious how kids nowadays think about this. When I was a kid, nobody got divorced.
No.
And I know that sounds very like,
It's
I'm
true.
talking about the 1950s, but no, I'm talking about like the late 80s.
80s, 90s.
And 90s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And I can't think of
No.
any.
No,
and
people stuck it out.
people stuck
They
it out.
figured it out, or they tolerated it.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah. And like,
And I'm not saying you should tolerate it, because I'm
No.
saying that period of time also entrained us to do a lot of bad stuff too.
right.
But you stuck it out. You worked it out together.
Right. Well, that's what you said out loud as you're working it out together. But I think a lot of people probably didn't work it out together. They just swept it under the rug
For
together.
sure. Yes. Because there was no such thing as personal development or self-awareness or
Exactly.
emotional IQ or any of these buzzwords that we have now.
Right.
And we were just joking around earlier, like having diagnoses that didn't even, maybe it was in the DSM-5. I have no idea. I haven't gone back and looked.
Right.
I'm just saying that I have figured out just in this past year some disorders that literally I wasn't aware of. Certainly my parents weren't aware of that I
Right.
might have had, and they weren't going to take me to a therapist to find
Right.
out.
Right.
It was just like Andrea does that weird thing where she cries when her food touches and she's being so much of a pain in my ass. Like, why can't she just have gravy on top of mashed potatoes? It's not that big a deal. Get over it. Like, they were so impatient with me.
I used to eat, can you believe this? I used to eat my pasta plain.
I did too. A lot of kids do.
Yeah.
Because it's a texture thing. And so we were talking about, like, if you don't have a lot of control over your environment, you're going to control your food.
That just... So I'm going to be putting a lot of thought into that for like the next 5
6
months. I guarantee you. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this is all trauma. Like, trauma has you behave in maladaptive ways, and we think that it's our personality. And I think that the most beautiful thing about getting older, I won't say old, older.
Sure.
I almost fumbled there, is that you recognize that you don't have to take on the story anymore.
Agreed.
It was a story that you got handed when you were a kid, and you're so afraid, I think, in your 20s and your 30s to like upend the apple cart, or like, who is this going to hurt? Or, like, am I going to ruin that relationship with my family? Or am I going to ruin my relationship with my mother because I actually stand up for myself once and for all, or whatever it might be. But it's like an evolution. And as you continue to get older, you're like, how much longer am I going to continue to live for other people? And when am I going to actually start showing up for myself? And when do I get to be more myself?
Right.
And so that's kind of what you were doing in your photography, right? Is you were allowing people to finally be themselves.
Yes. Even
if it was for 2 hours before they had to go back to the boyfriend that was controlling the shit out of them because they didn't know any different.
Right.
That's what love was. We were talking about that earlier too. Like, that's what love was. When I was a kid, I was controlled. And so that's what love means. And so every relationship that I'm going to get into now, I'm going to let them control the shit out of me because I don't have any needs, and I certainly don't have any feelings, and I don't know how to speak up for them. I haven't even touched my needs and my feelings in a really long time. I wasn't allowed to have them, or I wasn't allowed to express them, or people didn't do that. They shoved it under the rug. They just wave the magic fairy dust and it all goes away. It's all rainbows and unicorns. And it's just, life is not. Life is really, really, especially... Okay, so I have some thoughts on this because I know there's going to be a reaction. We have it, humanity has it the easiest in some ways that we've ever had it. Like when I read Ancestry.com and I'm like, oh my God, the potato famine, or like, holy shit, we used to just dump sewage in the street. Like things like that, or we didn't have penicillin, those kind of, bubonic plague. Like there's so many things I could list, that we lived
100%.
through that were horrific
100%
in comparison to what we are challenged with now. But now we're challenged on such a completely, like we're on overload with how much we're challenged with.
Exactly. And it's all
in the brain.
It's
all in the ego. It's all in the ego.
And it's challenging like the chemistry in our brain. It's like so hard right now, I feel like. And I struggle with, the doom scrolling and the social media stuff.
Everyone would be amiss if they wouldn't say that they aren't stressed in some way.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel like I am more stressed today in some ways. Not in all ways, in some ways.
Than when you were in that 2-bedroom apartment with your girlfriend, unemployed?
Yeah, probably.
Really?
Because I feel like just the world has...
changed in
such ways,
way.
And the world has figured out how to...
Did we even have social media back then?
We did, but it was not like it is today. No, it was funny. I was just talking to somebody the other day.
Oh my God, I think we had Tumblr.
We probably did. No, I was talking to somebody the other day who reminded me that there was a time in social media where, like, let's say whatever it was, Tumblr or LiveJournal or whatever it was that we were on.
A blog post.
Where let's say you were following like 15 people.
Yeah.
And they were probably people you either knew or you wanted to know or whatever. Where you would start scrolling and you would get to the end. Right? because you've only followed 10 people. So you would open up whatever social media thing it was, and you would find like 5 of your 10 people posted something new since the last time you looked. And so you would get through the end of the 5, and it would just be like, okay, now I'm at what I've already seen yesterday or the day before or whatnot. That's not true anymore, because now you open it up and it is endless. And 90% of what you're looking at is not what you chose. It is what someone else chose, what the algorithm chose, what the platform chose, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they are manipulating, God, not to be super conspiratorial, but they are manipulating your brain chemistry.
Yes, they are.
Hard.
Yeah.
And I fall victim to it as much as anyone else does.
Everybody does.
We all do.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is the source of a massive amount of our stress.
For sure. I get 300 ads about how I need to do skincare all the time because I'm the age that I am as a female, or something else that would keep me more youthful. Sure. And it's like, oh my God.
I get a lot of like eat better stuff. You know, just sign up for this service and your food consumption is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Just
you'll thrive if you get all this food delivered on Sunday.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so it's all this and then it just makes me feel like I eat like crap, which I honestly don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be better. Everyone could be better, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not like the worst person in the world. I don't eat McDonald's every day. Like, my God. Anyway. And
nothing against the people who do.
Nothing against the people who do and like whatever. And everybody makes their choices. But, you know, but I just look at it and it's like the analogy I would put to it is when I was a teenager, the place that would make me feel bad was the mall. You'd go to the mall and you'd see advertisements everywhere of people who dress really well and they're perfect looking. Or
you didn't have money to walk into that store.
Or you didn't have the money. Yes, you couldn't afford that pair of shoes or the designer socks or the sunglasses or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you would go into the mall. And your friends
had them, but you didn't. Right.
So you'd go to the mall and you'd feel kind of bad and you would just be like, oh, I'm like, look at me compared to these ads that I'm seeing everywhere. And you just kind of walk out of there feeling sort of schlubby.
Yep.
But you could walk in and out of the mall. And I didn't go to the mall every day.
No.
I didn't go to the mall when I first woke up in the morning. No. I didn't go to the mall when I went to bed at night. Like, I went to the mall in very tiny increments. I feel like social media is that mall experience, but all the time. And we're all doing it. Mm-hmm. And I've even taken steps to really reduce my consumption. I don't have any of the apps on my phone. I allow myself
your self-discipline.
Oh, I took them off like middle of COVID, I want to say, somewhere in there, because social media was making me feel like the world was ending. And in some ways, I mean, COVID was bad. It was awful.
Well, in some ways the world did end.
And in some ways the world did end.
As we knew it.
But it was compounding with social media in so many ways. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I've taken all the apps off my phone, which I think is a step above a lot of people. But just, you know, by my own yardstick, I think it was a really good thing to do. And I'm glad I've done it. I have no intention of putting them back on. But I still, when I'm at home sitting on the couch, there are moments where I'm just like, holy moly, 3 hours have gone by and all I've done is look at social media. What am I doing? And I just feel awful.
Do you?
Yeah, I always feel awful when I look at it for more than 5-10 minutes. Because it's just pounding me with bad news, and this is how you can make your life better, and this is what everyone else is doing that you're not doing, and oh my gosh, you know so many people who are like jet setting around in Paris right now, and you're not, and
I'm very careful about who I follow.
I want to be careful about who I follow, but that's part of the
problem.
It's
very curated at this point, and I've gone through
it's
different
not my
versions
own curation, though.
Oh no,
because
we went back to the ads, right?
Right.
But and then in addition, your phone's listening to you, but right. So it is feeding the ads of conversations that you're having, right? So
I was just speaking of funny story. I was just out, went to a movie like a month ago or 3 weeks ago or something, and had a random conversation about David Duchovny when I was out. The second I got home, turned on the TV, what was the first thing that my television tried to get me to watch?
A movie with David Duchovny.
The X-Files.
Yeah.
I have not watched The X-Files in 20 years.
Yeah, but all of a
sudden
it knew you wanted to watch it.
All of a sudden it knew I wanted, because I said the name, David Duchovny.
Yep.
It's like,
oh my God, you can't get away from it.
I can't get away from it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think we were talking about this earlier. It's a conscious choice. It's a conscious choice about what you surround yourself with and having good discernment. And I don't think that a lot of people have good boundaries around that. Certainly we can talk about levels of consciousness and why.
Exactly.
For sure, without getting too spiritual on you, first and second dimension reality of consciousness is pretty low vibration. So we're talking about the personality disorders that we were talking about earlier, who, level 1 is more like the sociopath or the psychopath. Level 2 is more like the personality disorder, right? They like a lot of drama. 3 is kind of like what we were all just sitting in.
Right.
Lots of war, lots of decisiveness. And then there's a conscious choice on whether or not I'm going to, it's not that I'm purifying myself or like being better. It's not a competition. It's just a choice. It's a choice of protecting your own sense of peace.
For sure.
I think you have to, at some point, decide which side you're going to be on. And it's not that I'm walking around in ignorance. It's that I'm allowing in through a filter of a safe set of boundaries for me. And it's not that I don't want to be challenged in my core values. It's just that ultimately I'm not bombarding myself with unnecessary drama, unnecessary divisiveness, unnecessary chaos, unnecessary fear. Like, I'm not invalidating anyone's experience. I'm just saying, like, at a certain point, how much do I allow in order for me to be the most loving and caring and compassionate person that I can be,
right,
so that I don't perpetuate more harm in the world. And I think that you make a conscious decision at a certain point, hopefully, that in that elevation of consciousness, that you don't allow this other stuff, for lack of a better word, in your life anymore. And so having no apps on your phone is incredible, right? Some people think it's crazy that my phone is always on Do Not Disturb and they can't get a hold of me. But I'm like, you don't remember there was this time when the phone was
100%.
hanging on the wall, and if you didn't get a hold of somebody, you just fucking didn't get a hold of them.
100%.
And you kept calling back until you did, or you
100%.
left a message when we finally had those.
Right.
And like, there's other ways to get a hold of me. There's
Right.
certainly slower.
Right.
Yeah. Certainly isn't on your timeline, but it definitely is on mine.
I 100% agree with you. The challenge, I would say, and the analogy I would make is it's similar to quitting smoking. Like, as a former smoker myself, and I would argue everyone...
I forgot that you smoked.
Yeah, I did. And I quit several times and picked it back up again and quit and like, ugh. But no, every former smoker will relate when I say there's a point where you make the conscious decision to quit, and then there's the point when you actually quit, because there's an addiction that's going on in your brain. It's no different than
those abusive relationships.
It's no different than those abusive relationships.
You're just getting doused with dopamine.
And I feel like so many
trying
people...
to regulate your nervous system in a way that was maladaptive because you were stressed out when you were a teenager.
Yep. And I feel like when it comes to stuff like social media, there's millions of people who want to quit and are saying, I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
But haven't quit, myself included.
Yeah. You want to quit all social media.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's giving me a whole lot of benefit. But I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that makes us a little bit miserable because every single day we're being defeated. in that you're consciously saying, I want to quit, but then you're not actually quitting because you know you're addicted. And so every single day you're kind of living through this defeat.
It's the new addiction.
Yes.
Besides fentanyl.
Which is probably way worse.
It is. We've had lots of podcasts about that now.
Did I tell you what happened to me when it came to not fentanyl? What's the
meth?
What's the painkiller that they prescribe?
Opioids.
Yeah, but it has like a very specific name, and it's led a lot of people. Like a lot of people have gotten it prescribed, and then when the prescription runs out, they move over to fentanyl. What is it? They made like documentaries about this. I'm blanking on the name.
It is an opioid.
Yes,
though.
a really strong one.
Yeah, it's like a painkiller that you get.
Yes.
Can't say I was ever addicted to them, so I can't think of it.
I've never been addicted either,
yeah.
But I was prescribed it once. What is it?
It's on the tip of my tongue. It's bugging
the pharmacy that was, or not the pharmacy, the pharmaceutical company that was making it has been sued, and they've lost some lawsuits.
Yes.
And anyway, a few years ago.
It'll come to me.
Yeah, it'll come to me too in a second. I had a kidney stone, which was super painful.
I remember.
Yeah, really, really painful. And they...
Very difficult for a man.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's any easier for a woman, but...
I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
But it sucked.
Yes.
Really bad.
And for some reason, men get it more than women.
Then no one knows why. Or maybe someone does, but I've yet to get it. I know.
We get plenty of things.
It's true. No. So anyway, they prescribed me that painkiller. What is it called? It's driving me crazy.
Keep going.
Anyway, they prescribed it to me, and the emergency room doctor even said, like, this is that stuff that you hear about on the news. So I'm only going to give you like 3 days worth.
Yeah.
Be really careful with it.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great. Leave the emergency room, go to the pharmacy like the next morning or something, and pick up my prescription. And 2 things happened. 1, they gave me more than 3 days worth. They gave me 30 days worth. Even though the doctor only prescribed 3, they gave me 30.
Of course they did.
1. 2, I go to pay for it. And I'm at the pharmacy, and I'm like, how much is it? And they're like, oh, it looks like there's a rebate, so we owe you money. And they gave me like $7.
So you got free drugs and $7.
Yeah.
That's the best deal ever.
Well, and I was just...
I mean, if you're into drugs.
I was walking out of the pharmacy thinking...
So perplexed.
This is a drug dealer.
Yeah.
They are giving me the first dose for free. Not only are they giving me the first dose, they're paying me to take the first dose.
Well, we did the same thing with cigarettes in the war. We've done it a lot of times.
Exactly.
Yeah, because people are not conscious to the fact that they're easily controlled and manipulated.
Right.
And so back to that elevated consciousness, it's recognizing it's no different than the Matrix, or you could come up with several movies now that have tried to point it out to us. Right? It's a choice. It's a choice on whether or not one day you wake up and you realize, like, why?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this?
Right.
And okay, so back to addiction. If we're gonna talk about that, which is an interesting curve, but back to addiction, it's really getting to the bottom of it. It's that you are looking for a way to escape the pain you're in, and so you can take that through fentanyl, which I've heard. It's been described as receiving a warm hug.
Okay.
Receiving a warm hug and protecting you from essentially everything, and giving you the feeling of euphoria in the sense of, like, I mean, you hear this about heroin too. The ability to, it's a spiritual experience, right?
Sure.
But it's breaking through, anytime you're doing a drug, it's breaking through, a psychedelic. You're breaking through the barrier of spiritual consciousness. For a moment, you get a glimpse, oh, I'm so much larger than this. And then you go back into your body again and you deal with the day-to-day. And so with some other kind of drug, you're just essentially putting on the pause button. No different than if you go to a psychiatrist and you get an antidepressant. You're essentially saying, this has gotten really, really hard and I need a fucking pause button. Can you make it stop? I'm scared and I don't know how to do the work around this.
Right.
And so, and I'm not invalidating anyone's experience. I've certainly been on an antidepressant at one point in my life, but I'm just saying, like, you are making a conscious decision that it has gotten too hard and you are afraid to go further. And so sometimes that's a very necessary thing depending on the tragedy in front of you, for sure. And I'm glad that we have it, but that's also why we abuse it, right? Is because
100%.
we get so stuck down in the social media or feeling defeated or feeling at such a low vibration that we can't break out of it. We literally can't see it and we lose hope.
Yeah.
And people lose hope. That's behind suicidal ideation to begin with. People lose hope because they lose their connection to something larger. They're so stuck in their body and so stuck in, disassociated too, but, so stuck in their mind about what is going on right here in the here and now, and they can't get out of the bigger picture, right?
Right.
So, okay, that was a really huge turn from talking about women. And we haven't even talked about photography, really.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, so let's see.
Editing works.
Maybe. I mean, we'll
knows?
see.
Okay.
We'll see. We're going to try and do this one all the way through.
Okay.
Okay, so when it goes to your most traumatic experience that you've had in your life, that might be hard to figure out, but because you've had some.
Sure.
But how has it shaped your art or professional path? How has it impacted your art?
That is a good question. I mean, I guess I would first have to
define
the most traumatic experience in my life. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
That is a very hard question. I can tell you the first thing that pops in my brain the moment you say that.
Do it. I have a feeling I know what it is, but keep going.
You might. I don't know. I mean, going back to growing up Catholic, this pops in my head at least once a week. As silly as it may be and as cliche.
It's not silly, Andrew.
It's cliche. I think this is a cliche thing I'm about to say, but that's okay. I remember the argument I had with my mother when I told her I don't want to go to church anymore. I was 18 years old, and it was by far the biggest fight I've ever had with another human being ever. And it bothers me to this day because there was no resolution to it whatsoever.
That's called your mother wound.
Okay. Don't doubt that it has a definition. And it was...
That impacted how you treat women going forward.
Very well could be.
I mean, your whole relationship with women comes from your relationship with your mom.
That's probably true.
Yes.
And my mother was a force of nature. She was physically imposing. She was very tall. She was taller than me, which...
I did not know
I'm
that.
a fairly tall person.
Yes,
so that,
you are.
She was 6'3".
Wow.
Yes. She was a librarian and a very disciplined librarian. Anyway, so we got in a huge fight about that. Massive. And where was I going with this? Oh, how does this influence photography?
Yeah.
That was
art in general.
Yeah, that was definitely a moment of my life of like sticking up for myself, maybe for the first time ever.
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I did that with my mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I'd probably like stuck up for myself with like grade school kids or whatever on some level somewhere, but none of that was like life affirming and life changing. Like none of that like influenced like the entire direction of my life. Like that argument did, which was, am I going to be a good religious Catholic kid who goes and gets confirmed and lives this traditional Catholic life and gets married and has kids and lives in a cul-de-sac in the suburbs, or am I going to do what I want and have the life that I want? And of course, I'm 18 years old at that time, and so the life that I want is this rebellious life going against the system and being a different and whatever, and forging my own path in some way, which, was all very romanticized in my head at the time. Still is to a degree, I guess. But so that's what
every creative.
Right. So that's what kind of put me
artist.
down that path of like, it's okay to be a creative person and a creative artist and to do something that's not what everyone typically does. Right. Especially at that time. Like, oh my gosh. This was pre-internet, right? So like now you go online and you see a ton of photographers and a ton of people who model for them and a ton of art and
I don't pay attention as much anymore. I mean, I'm not saying I'm oblivious.
Right.
I'm just
I don't pay
saying,
attention to as much anymore either, but
this
it's
is not
all
model.
out in the open.
I'm not doing One Model Place or Model Mayhem
I'm not
anymore.
either anymore. But but we're all out in the open about it. But back then nobody was, right? So it's like,
yeah, it was on the down low.
It was on the down low in a big way. And, so making a conscious decision to go into that world.
Yeah, it was subversive culture.
It was very subversive culture. And I wouldn't have been able to.
Like me doing naked photographs of me being pregnant at 23 in 1996 on the Marin Headlands with families driving by as I'm sitting in a tree. Like, I wasn't sitting in a tree the whole time, but like, you get my point.
Oh,
like,
yeah. No, that's funny you say 1996 because that was the year I did my first.
That's when I did my
with another human being.
Same.
Up until then, I had only photographed mailboxes and trees.
Because up until that point, it wasn't important to me to commemorate. I mean, I look at the same thing. Earlier, you and I were talking about you collecting things. You could say, in a way, I've collected tattoos. For me, tattoos encapsulate a moment in time that I really can't ever get back.
Sure.
Right? No different than like a fragrance that reminds you of a certain time, or putting on a song and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I remember when I used to listen to this, or whatever it might be, right? It encapsulates time. So like, where was I going with that? Why did I bring up tattoos? Shoot, help me.
It was oh God.
Andrew!
We're old.
We're not that old.
I know. No, it was about capturing a moment in time and collecting things and memory or...
You lost it too.
I lost it too.
Oh my God, you're just as much in the moment as I am.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're sorry to anybody who's listening or watching just now. Hopefully it comes back to us, or maybe it won't. Kind of like we can't even still think of what that drug is.
I know, and someone listening to this is going to be like,
it's screaming. Yeah, screaming. It's this.
They made a whole show about it.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of what it is either. I just never, that wasn't my thing. Yeah. I mean, I worked with people while I was stripping that were totally into all kinds of different stuff.
I would say,
I mean, all different kinds of stuff.
Yeah, my experience with drugs are pretty low. I've done some.
Yeah.
For sure. I've smoked my share of weed, for sure. I've done mushrooms.
Yeah.
But I've never done super hard drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had boundaries around it. I certainly was rebellious just based upon the fact that my dad was an undercover DEA agent. And I think because of so much control, there was so much I had a very curious mind, and we weren't allowed to talk about anything. There was a lot of shame about asking any questions, right? So maybe that's, a lot of my curiosity too, even at this age, is I just feel like I was making up for lost time. I felt so sheltered growing up.
Me too.
So incredibly naive and sheltered compared to the rest of the world. And
Same.
I got teased for it. I got bullied for it. I got bullied for it a lot, actually, especially when I left home. And so, I don't know where I was going with that either, but ultimately I'm constantly trying to learn more about anything at this point in my life, because I feel like I'm consistently trying to make up for the childhood that I'm undoing. I'm undoing in some ways. And I'm filling in the gaps of spaces in my life that either I wasn't educated on, or it just never got discussed, or never got modeled to me. And yeah, I guess if anything, I'm just trying to be a better version of me as I get older.
Yeah, same.
Well, and I think, I mean, I could ask you, but my own personal opinion of that is you make a conscious choice. You make a choice at some point that you're either going to, it's usually mid 40s, early to mid 40s. You make a conscious choice. By 50, you're either doing it or you're not.
Right.
You've already made the choice. But
100%.
But, you either accept like life is a struggle and it's going to be terrible. And this is the story that I've adopted, and it's just too scary to get out of that story. I don't want to know. Or you make the conscious choice to do the work around the stories that you've been handed, and you pick them up individually, and you toss them around, and you say, is this mine? Do I want to own this still? Does this still make sense to me? Why am I still doing this? We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to women.
We keep getting away from it somehow.
I know. We're so slippery that way.
Yes.
Let's see. Okay. Is there anything that I wanted to ask you about women that I didn't ask? Okay. Well, we can move on from women if you want.
We can, anything you want.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
Okay. Let's see what else I don't know about you that we haven't covered in our 2 episodes back to back. Let's see. This is more about childhood stuff. Okay, let's talk about.
Man, your brain is turning so hard.
Well, there's so many ways I could take it, and I'm kind of looking at time, and I'm
Okay.
like, which direction do I really want to take this for the last part? But
Okay.
yeah, I guess back to women. I mean, I don't want to keep bringing it back to that, but really, I do think that you are a source of information when it comes to your experience. I mean, you have. No different than if you had worked with women in like some capacity when it came to being a therapist, or like you had dedicated your life in some way, even though this hasn't been your daytime job, although I've been arguing for it to be since probably I met you.
I probably spend more time on it than I do my daytime job.
Well, I mean, and to each their own. Like, that was a conscious choice. You were also raised with parents that believed that you had to have that kind of day job.
Sure. 100%.
And you tried to buck the system for a bit there. I watched you do it. And then you would go back into having what they wanted for you, or what society wanted for you. But ultimately, like, I did the same thing too. I think we both, as creatives, have tried to buck the system time and time again, and try to make a name for ourselves in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if we had to really kind of project out, I really think that's hopefully where the world's going, more and more each day. I think that's why it's so intimidating, is because our past experience really is about sitting in the cubicle.
100%.
You were talking about earlier, like the possibility of losing your job. And, as things start to change, what will you do? It's going to pressure you into making new choices. And going back to that argument with your mom, really your gift, if you were to say, looking back on your life, has really been your exceptional way to transform your relationship with your mom into how you chose. Maybe you didn't choose like 250 different romantic relationships, but in a certain way, you were working out that wound over and over and over again consciously. So you kind of were getting therapy in a way. And in some ways, I was getting therapy too, or giving therapy by, working in the adult entertainment industry, by spending a lot of time with other men, trying to fill in the gap
I remember when I started stripping, I remember somebody that I sat down with. I don't remember what they looked like or who they were now, but I remember specifically, so I could guess who it was. Specifically them saying, all women that are sitting in this strip club have daddy issues. And I remember thinking, well, I don't really have daddy issues. And now when I look back, I'm like, I absolutely did. But for me, I was consistently working out that void
Sure.
that my dad didn't provide because he was off being a hotshot, as a deputy district attorney or an undercover DEA agent or investigator in the 60s or whatever he was up to. And you could say like he was doing his best to provide for his family because he didn't want us to fail. And I appreciate that. I'm not saying I don't appreciate his dedication or all of the things that he did for us, but at the same time, he wasn't around. He wasn't a parent. And so I spent years trying to understand men. I grew up in a family of 3 other women and no men. My dad would come home. He would eat dinner. When I was really young, he would fall asleep studying the law for law, like his classes, putting himself through law school, or, like he just was either exhausted or didn't have the time. And, my mom would argue right now and say I got more time with him than my older 2 sisters, and I believe that to be true. But still, I spent years trying to understand men. I think I'm still trying to understand men because of that experience, that younger childhood experience.
Sure.
And so you could say that we've mirrored each other.
Yeah,
in that regard.
You absolutely could.
In that regard, our experiences aren't the same, but they're similar in the way that we both tried to handle it creatively. I think that you and I tried to handle it creatively rather than necessarily getting addicted to a substance, although I can say that I certainly had addictive substances in my life and was abusive with them, but more in a codependent way than anything, at different times in my life to get me through significant moments. But ultimately, you and I have kind of reflected each other through our friendship in the sense that we've helped each other. It's really interesting, too, when we come together. But, it's always at really interesting times in our lives. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, that we have always helped each other through or navigate through difficult circumstances at different times. And so, yeah, I would say that that's what I've really noticed about our friendship over the years. And then I was also saying earlier, and can highlight again, that how you've evolved and how you've changed, which is kind of how I started out the first podcast with you, is how we've both changed since we've known each other. We were figured out 18 years. We met in 2007. We were much, much younger versions. You were in your late 20s. I was in my early 30s. I was in a very difficult time in my marriage. And you helped me through that. You've helped me through that many times, actually. And, I've also watched you go from somebody who was, and I hope you take this, I hope I don't offend you when I say this. But,
you will. I guarantee you won't.
Okay. But like a little bit more emotionally sheltered than you are now, or certainly more avoidant of the bigger conversations or the bigger emotions. And I've watched you evolve and grow through that and push through that and do the work around that. And so it's been really wonderful to watch you evolve. And so we missed kind of, how you've watched me evolve too. But I know that I must be different than I was when I was 33.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, same.
In some ways.
But
the core is still
the core
there.
is still there, but maybe hopefully less tragic. Hopefully less tragic than I was back then, and maybe less hard. Certainly, hopefully softer and kinder than I was even to myself back then and to other people too. So yeah, I'm looking at the time.
Okay.
We probably have covered a lot of it, but Yeah, I
keep feeling like there's a question you're reading on there and that you're
there
hesitating to
isn't.
say
No,
out
there
loud or
isn't. I'm
something.
like, no. There's no secrets.
Okay.
There's nothing here. I'm not trying to like hide anything. I'm just,
Okay.
I look down and I'm like, okay, well, did we cover everything really that I wanted to cover in this? I mean, we kind of jumped all over the map, but really what I wanted to incorporate is just your willingness to understand women at a level that I'm not saying, I can't generalize, but I'm saying that most men don't have the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Most men don't have the opportunity to do that, which is
Not
unfortunate.
in the way that you have.
No, which is very unfortunate. And I never in a bazillion years would I say I'm some expert when it comes to women.
But
right?
you've gained wisdom.
But I have gained some wisdom, and I've gained enough wisdom to know that, I don't know, empathy is better than pretending you know everything, I guess. That would be the most succinct way I can sum it up in like 5 words. Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's the best I got there.
Well, I would also say, like, in relationships, it's not important to be right.
Oh, absolutely. Agree. It's definitely not important to be right. Most of the time, it's not important to be right at all. Because let's face it, most of the time we're not right.
Yeah. Or we just don't see each other's perspective.
Right. Or maybe most of the time I'm right from my perspective, but my perspective isn't everyone's perspective, right? And it never will be, nor should it be. So there's that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like we talked about before, where I am now with my life.
Where are you now?
Where I am now with my life when it comes to photography and making art and that kind of thing is I just try very, very hard to foster a space and a situation where people can bring themselves to that situation. And I feel like that's how we should be in all things. I just happen to be working in a space that just inherently comes with a very vulnerable, physically vulnerable, and by extension emotionally vulnerable aspect to it, right? Like when someone walks into a coffee shop and orders a cup of coffee, sure, that's also a space where one should foster an environment where you can bring your whole self, right? But it is not inherently super vulnerable walking into that coffee shop. But the situations I'm in and that the people I'm working with are in is one that just right off the bat has a certain sense of vulnerability. Not unlike going into a doctor's office or a therapist's office or, anything like that. So I try more than ever, probably more than I used to. I would argue I've gotten better at this over the years and that I have a long way to go too, right? So hopefully when I'm 85, I'll be even better at that than I am today.
Do you think you'll still be photographing people when you're 85?
I want to be. Yes.
Okay,
I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to quit.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking when I first got in here that it's getting physically harder.
Is it?
Oh, my eyesight is not doing great compared to what it used to be. I kid you not, I just bought a camera in the last couple of weeks that I bought specifically because, like, the writing on the camera is big compared to some other cameras that I have. It's big and it's colorful. And is it the best camera for specific things? No, but I can read it. That's sad that I'm making those kind of technical choices based on like my own physical limitations when I've never had to do that before.
That's the grace of getting older.
It is the grace of getting older. But that being said, do I hope that I'm still doing this kind of, like, doing some sort of creative exercise when I'm 85? Yes. Do I hope that includes working with people? Yes. Is it necessarily going to be like
What you're doing now?
a naked human body? I don't know. Maybe. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing it for how many decades now? So
Yeah.
decades from now, it probably will still be true. I don't know.
It gives you a certain sense of appreciation for what you used to have
Yes.
as you get older.
100%.
It gives you perspective on what you used to have as far as abilities or things you took for granted, like eyesight.
Yes.
You just showed up every day. You were more worried about like the fight that you had with your parents or
Yes.
whether or not you could pay rent, but you had great eyesight, something you didn't even have to worry about.
True.
You could eat McDonald's 5 days in a row and never go to the gym and still look
Right, exactly. And now
$1.20
yeah,
wet.
and now when I'm doing sessions, I have to
Not
be like,
that I
oh,
ever did that.
we need to take a break for 5 minutes. My back hurts.
Or, wow.
Oh, I'm at that point. Yeah.
Wow.
So I've
That's huge for you.
I've had several sessions over the last couple of years where, like, halfway through it, I just had to be like, we need to take a break, and I need to sit for a minute because my back is killing me.
Yeah, it's a workout.
Yeah.
It is. It's a workout for the photographer and the model.
Oh, absolutely. It always has been.
Yep.
But it's usually, in the past, I've always just been like, I'm just going to power through no matter what, because I'm not the one doing the more difficult task.
So you've gotten more compassionate with yourself.
With
over
myself,
time.
yes.
Look at you. You used to extend compassion to everyone else,
Yes.
and now over time you've become
Yes.
more compassionate with yourself.
Yes, and
Me
kind
too.
of go full circle on that. You know, sometimes being compassionate with yourself is being compassionate to other people.
Yes.
Sometimes in
Yeah.
certain contexts.
We were talking about
So,
you can only be so loving or compassionate to a certain level.
Yeah.
The only extent to other people that, God, I'm fucking this up. Okay. You can only be loving and compassionate to other people in the same way or to the same level of depth
Yeah.
that you have been with yourself.
Yeah.
You can that's where you can meet people.
Yep.
And that changes over time, hopefully, too.
Yeah.
Right? Your
100%.
ability to meet that, which is what I was giving you credit for earlier, right? Your ability to meet that now as opposed to when I first met you is so much deeper. The level is so much deeper. And you even touched on this, that it would take 4 or 5 sessions with a model to be able to get her to be comfortable enough to
For
see
sure.
her more authentically.
For sure.
Now it doesn't take me knowing you for 18 years for you to be that vulnerable with
sure.
others.
For sure.
And I think hopefully if we're doing work on ourselves, we evolve into that.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, the questions I had on here really were about like how you got into photography, which we skipped over this time. And like, and like what your childhood was like and like how that impacted the work that you do with women.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, and we touched on this a little earlier when it comes to the childhood. And this is, I think, the story of so many people. So I am not unique here.
Stop minimizing your experience,
Okay.
please.
Sorry. You know, I definitely wanted to do something that was unconventional, you know, and so
Me too.
this is what I landed into. This is what I felt like I was good at from an early stage.
Yeah.
And of course, when I look back on what I was doing decades ago, it's all terrible, but I thought it was great. So, and that's what matters.
But you had to start somewhere.
Exactly. But that's what matters. Is like, I think a lot of people, when it comes to any kind of art they do, whether you're a writer or a musician or whatever, a lot of times you end up doing that, not because, like, in the movies, they want to tell us this narrative of like, oh gosh, I wanted to be a musician since I was 2 years old and it was so my passion and blah, blah. And that might be true for some people. But I think a lot of times when you get into whatever form of self-expression you're doing, you got into it because you got an early taste of success somehow. And photography is what I got my first taste of success with, right? Like I tried drawing with a pencil when I was 10 years old and I never felt a taste of success with it, even though I enjoyed it. or even though I was interested in it. In photography, I just got that small little taste, tiny,
that kept you going.
That just like propelled you to the next moment. And that's, and so whenever people are young, or if you want to talk about like early childhood development or whatever, I would argue like give your kid a lot of things to try, because one of those things they're going to get an early taste of success. And that's probably going to propel them to the next thing and the next thing. And it's going to be random. I wouldn't say I had an early taste of success with photography because I was particularly good at it. It just fell in my lap, that little smidge of something. And so fate, there you go. Boom, you move forward.
But I think also we haven't gone into past lives or anything with you, but there's a certain thing that appeals to you too, as you remember that that's a gift and a skill that is specific to you.
100%.
Yes, you've put in a lot of man hours doing it in this lifetime, more so than I have. But there is something that comes out of it that's natural, that keeps propelling you forward in that success. That, for instance, me behind the camera would be a completely different experience. Even if I do know how to set up a frame. Even if you and I both know I have a very good eye for photography. Because it makes a very good model. I do agree that I never got into photography because to me it never felt like the right expression or format for me. And so that's certainly unique to you. And you do that better than most people. Otherwise you wouldn't have been doing it this long.
Well, and to clarify that moment of success that you have, some of that probably came from the outside. Right? Like I mentioned before, I had a great teacher.
You did have a great teacher.
And so the validation, like I might have been amazing at making drawings, but nobody ever gave me the validation. And somebody did give me the validation with photography. So things connect.
And also, you could also argue that you were looking for validation.
Absolutely. Of course I was. Which you can go into your parents and all that. Everything that goes full circle into that.
Yes.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
Which I think makes the best creative artists, right? Why do we become artists? We become artists because we want to be part of that subversive culture. We're rebelling from the system. We are the renaissance of society. I'll never forget sitting in my English. I loved this professor. He was like a second dad to me in college, and he's dead now. But I'll never forget. I can still picture him, where he was standing, where I was sitting in the room when he said, he said it with such emphatic, like, passion. He was like, it is your job as a creative, as an artist, to challenge the belief systems of culture from here until the day you die. It is your job to society to continue to change and push out the boundaries of what people thought was possible or what people think. It's your job to challenge that. And that's what artists do, right? And I think the greatest artists do come from a background that is very unique, or you could argue,
for sure,
full of trauma.
For sure.
And their art can be really creative expressions of how they power through
100%.
those experiences
100%.
In their life. And just like you were saying earlier, you can see a model show up at one cycle in her life, and then 5 years later, she's in a completely different place. And so it's a really beautiful way to process. And I think that the world is losing that process. Like you were saying earlier, you feel like a historian, you keep collecting things just based upon the fact that, like, nobody's doing that anymore, whether it becomes typewriters or old photographs or film or cameras or
I can go
posters,
into that a lot.
Watches now.
Yeah, watches now. Yeah, that's been true for a little while. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I feel like, God, if you want to go down that road, so much is getting lost right now when it comes to
Individual expression.
individual expression, and
We're becoming more homogenized.
so bad.
Yeah. We're copying each other.
We're copying each other. We're making content for the sake of content.
Yes, we're
which
not
is
original anymore.
We're not original anymore. It didn't get into AI, which is like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah, I
even
know.
get me started.
Yeah. I know.
So yeah. Anyway, but no.
Okay, so I have a great question.
Okay.
I do have a great question.
Okay.
How do you think we can cultivate more love for ourselves and the world through art and collaboration?
That's a good question. One, just to go back to this, and I know this is an obvious answer, but put down social media for God's sakes and get back to finding community in the real world. Find spaces to share your art face to face with people. Find spaces to make art face to face with people. I've been saying for a long time, part of the reason why I continue to work with nudes and figure studies and whatnot is because it affords me an opportunity to work face to face with another human being. So I'm not so solitary, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a whole community.
Same.
Right?
That's why I like the work that I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, so find communities that are real, even if they seem on the surface smaller. Because it's a big, giant bill of goods that we've been sold that social media makes your community bigger. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. It makes your community, it makes you isolated. And everyone who's on it isolated. Mm-hmm. So find communities that are... And I need to work on this myself. I need to be better at this myself. Yeah,
we're not taking it as
right.
Yeah, you're throwing rocks.
Right. No, yeah. I'm just as guilty as everyone else.
Yeah.
But we need to get back to, I remember years and years and years ago, I used to be involved in this group where it was like 50 people, where we would all mail each other a print. And you would just like kind of pay it forward in a big circle. Mm-hmm. And every time a print got mailed forward, you would have to write your impressions of it and then mail it to the next person. And it would be like an entire year before it would come back full circle, and you would get the print that you sent out back with all the feedback on it. And it was so cool.
I bet.
And we need to
organize that.
I should, actually. I had almost forgotten all about this until just now.
Okay.
So the memory is like suddenly coming back, because I remember you would get that manila envelope in the mail, and it would be a new print with like the feedback that everyone has left it up to you, and then you would add your paragraph, put it back in the envelope, and mail it on to the next.
Yeah. It's no different than getting feedback. Like my daughter went to Pacific Northwest College of the Arts, and you have to sit there with all your students and get feedback on your portfolio, or or we did it in college with our creative writing papers. Right. We would have to read each other's stuff and give feedback.
Get back to physical spaces, as scary as that is, as hard as that is, and get used to being in physical spaces and failing. Fail hard. Fall on your face all the time, because that's good for you. And it doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't have to be like painful.
Yeah, but learning mistakes actually makes you better at being human.
And being on the internet is just too much of like a positive feedback loop in a lot of ways. Like
everyone gets a trophy.
Well, you put a piece of art, and it's just like, and that's positive affirmation in a way.
Yeah,
but it doesn't.
It's not. Yeah,
it doesn't. You don't grow from. Yeah, I'll post a picture that gets like 500 likes or whatever it is, but I didn't grow at all from that. I don't know why someone liked it. They probably looked at it for fraction of a second.
But why are you doing it, right?
Exactly, because I'm addicted to it.
No, you're doing it because you actually enjoy it. Whether you
True.
get 500 likes or not is
True.
necessarily why you're sharing it with the world.
True. But I need to find better ways to share things with the world, and that would be physical spaces. I need to be better at that, and I need to be better at getting together with people one-on-one, either one-on-one or in groups or whatever it may be. And yeah, we all need to be doing it.
Okay.
So.
All right. Wise words from Andrew Kaiser.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you spending so much time with me today.
You're welcome. How long have we been doing this? Almost 4 hours.
A while. A definite while. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate our friendship. I've really gotten to know some aspects of you today that I did not know, which I think is amazing after 18 years that we're still learning things about each other. But thank you. And
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. Your presence here means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for your time and energy. If this conversation resonated with you or sparked any questions, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from each of you. Your insights, experiences, and curiosities always enrich this space. It's important to remember that trauma, often unseen and unacknowledged, can keep us from living fully in our joy. Through my intuitive healing process, I help release the weight of generational trauma, empowering you to reconnect with your true self and experience life in greater harmony. If you feel called to explore this deeper work, I invite you to book a one-on-one intuitive session or even embark on a personalized journey with the Phoenix Immersion, a 2-day retreat designed to support profound transformation. You can find all the details below. For those who've liked, subscribed, or left comments already, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your engagement means everything, and I'm deeply grateful for the connection we're building in this community. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm excited for all the healing and transformation we'll continue to explore together. As always, I'm forever grateful for you, and I cannot wait to see what unfolds next. Take care, and until next time.